Well, I'm no stranger to controversy, and this week has been no exception. The phrase "no plan B" sparked some of the biggest discussions I've had on Instagram and in my DMs and on my emails. Some of you thought it was inspiring, while others called it stupid, reckless, worst advice ever. But what if the real takeaway here isn't about whether it's right or wrong, but it's more about context? Today I'm talking about advice, especially in the music industry, and how it needs context to be useful, and how different musicians take different paths to success. So if you watched my previous video and you strongly agreed or disagreed, or you're just a fan of this channel, stay tuned. And if you're new here, my name is Aaron Apter. I'm a musician living and working in Nashville, Tennessee. When I moved here, I hadn't played music for years. And after about a year being here, I got the music bug and I decided to pursue music again full-time after not playing for about a decade. And I've been playing full-time now for 2 years, and this channel documents all my ups and downs and the many spaces in between. So let's get right to the heart of the discussion here. Let's talk about context. And you can't talk about context on the internet without sound bites. And here's what I mean by sound bites. If you're ever on TikTok, Instagram, even YouTube, you'll always see something like, "He never expected what happened next. The one thing you need to do. I was shocked to see he was so wrong." You know what I'm talking about, the clickbait stuff. And that's what the internet thrives upon. You see, we're in this era where we have access to all this information, all these online platforms, and everything seems like it's free. But I digress. The most valuable and finite thing we have right now is our time and our energy. And everyone's trying to find a way to mine our attention. That's the most valuable resource. There's only so many hours in a day. So pretty much everyone online is like, "Hey, over here, looky here. Wait, just a second, right here. Hey, come over here." And we really live in these exaggerated moments where you need to say something outlandish, hyperbolic to get somebody's attention. And because attention is such a valuable commodity, content creators, companies, anybody posting online has kind of migrated to this way of communicating and speaking where you want to immediately grab someone's attention by yelling, literally. So think about it this way. You're sitting in a coffee shop somewhere and all of a sudden someone yells, "Fire!" or "He's got a gun!" Whether you're trying to focus on something or not, you automatically give them your attention. It's involuntary. And that's kind of a cheap way or maybe a hack to get somebody's attention on the internet. You want to say something crazy outlandish, something that people need to gravitate towards. And that's where we see a lot of content going. All that to say is that the internet thrives on short, punchy, hot takes. Nuance is not rewarded. The phrase, "no plan B," sounds pretty absolute. But the thing is, musicians have vastly different risk tolerances, vastly different financial scenarios. Every musician has a different set of wants and needs. So it's not one size fit all. So why would one piece of advice be able to fit everybody? It doesn't. And if you watched my last video, what I'm referring to is I was talking to my friend Rocco, he's a music producer, and he said, "You can't have a plan B. You have to do this, you have to be all in or nothing." But do you? It all depends. Now for Rocco, that worked out well for him. That's his personality type, and that led to him having success. You could take somebody else with the same skill set, the same amount of money or lack thereof, the same location, the same personality, and that could be the worst advice for them ever. It all matters when we're talking about context and nuance. And some musicians prefer to have a day job. They prefer to have a safety net. They prefer to have balance. Just like some musicians prefer to be studio versus some musicians prefer to be live. Some musicians prefer to focus on online content. Some kind of blend all of those. There's no one right or wrong way. Many roads lead to Rome. One of my favorite stories is about the guitarist for Wilco, Nels Cline. He's a great guitarist, and he was a great guitarist before he was playing with Wilco. He was well established, but you know what? He had a day job working at Borders. because he only wanted to play the music that he wanted to play. And you know what? That worked for him. For somebody like Rocco, he probably will put a bullet through his brain if he worked at Borders because he's all in on this and there's nothing else he wants to do. And perhaps he's the type of personality that craves just going all in for something and putting all of his eggs into one basket. Is that right or wrong? No, it's just who he is. Just like Nils Klein was the guy that wanted to work at Borders until he got a full-time gig with Wilco, and both of those musicians found success by taking different paths. And then that brings us to our next point. What is success in music? Is a musician who makes a great living teaching music any less successful than a Grammy winner? Is somebody who plays 300 cover band gigs a year, supports their family, any more successful or less successful than an original artist who works a day job and barely makes ends meet, but is fulfilled by the music that they are creating? In case in point, let's take a look at Nashville's Lower Broadway. I know plenty of musicians down there who are making 6 figures a year, and I would say some of them are miserable because they want to be out on the road or they want to be in the studio doing original music. Conversely, I know some road dog musicians who are playing on some massive stages and aren't doing that well financially and are unhappy. And I've actually known musicians who have taken a break from the road and played on Broadway because they simply just want to sleep in their beds and they want to see their families every day. So there's various degrees of success, and everybody's vision of success is different. What is your vision of success? Not somebody else's. So we're looking at everything online right now and seeing what someone else is doing and comparing ourselves to them. Well, that person has a different set of circumstances. That person has a different set of goals. That person's wired differently. Their path has nothing to do with yours. Keep that in mind. So let's talk about risk assessment then. Having no fallback plan worked well for Rocco, but that could be disastrous to somebody who has major financial responsibilities, somebody who has a family, or somebody who just isn't ready for it yet. And so I want to share a couple different examples of different risk tolerances. And I'm going to use the instance of myself and one of my best friends. We went to music school together, we played together. I've known him for, wow, over half of my life. I think I've known him for over 20 years, wow. Woo. I met him when I was just a kid, and we both just wanted to make it super big in music. And we both have learned some really tough lessons along the way. And I want to share one of the toughest lessons I've learned. And for me, it's about the safety net and how having a safety net can actually hurt me. When I was in music school, I had an experience that completely changed my perspective. I suffered a concussion just days before I had a major jury performance. I thought I had a valid reason to postpone. Well, I did have a valid reason to postpone, but my professor didn't see it that way. He told me that I had to perform with everybody else, no exceptions. And I was up for the challenge, but in the back of my mind, I thought to myself, well, if I mess up, I'll have an excuse. But I want to give it a shot. Let's see if you can do it. Well, when it came time to play, I had that idea of the safety net in the back of my mind. And because of that, I kind of fell apart on the spot. And I was called out by my professor in front of the entire school. And I was humiliated so much that I started bawling like a baby. And he immediately kicked me out of the music school right there on the spot. It was tough. And here's where context matters. I'm sure most of you are saying, oh, that guy sounds like a real asshole. Well, he wasn't the most gentle about it. And at the time, I was devastated. I was devastated for years afterwards. But looking back now, I realized that experience forced me to confront a very harsh truth. Music is an unforgiving industry. Excuses, no matter how legitimate, don't matter on a professional stage. The higher you go, the less room for error you have. And that lesson shaped my entire approach to gigs. So now when something goes wrong, whether it be bad monitors, a last-minute setlist change, unexpected challenges, I don't think about excuses, I think about solutions. Because there's nothing there that's going to save me except me. And that's why the no plan B approach resonates with me. I'm not saying it's true for you, but it's something that I follow. And some people think that that's reckless, that's gambling, that's careless, but it's not about any of those for me. It's about eliminating the option to give up when the shit hits the fan. And you know what? If you're in the music business, the shit is going to hit the fan at some point, usually multiple points. But let's take a look at the other side of that coin. I want to talk about my good buddy. And he is built a little bit differently than me when it comes to risk assessment and finances. He's the kind of guy that likes to have financial security. He likes to have a job. And he did the cover band thing full time for a while, and he made money. And he was getting ground down. And all the while he was doing that, he actually had a job at a bank teller. And that worked for him. And then he went through a rough patch in life where he had some change of family situations, change in living situations, and he kind of had to restart again. And just like me, he kind of always identified himself as a musician, as an artist, and was grappling with a way to make that happen while making money. And he was looking for a job to get some financial stability. And during that time, he started a podcast for fun with his brother. After about a year or two, that podcast took off, and before he knew it, he was represented by William Morris. He was one of the top downloaded podcasts on the internet. He was like the top of the list of a very popular genre, true crime. And he's still doing it to this day, and he is wildly successful at it. He's like a celebrity. This is my buddy Patrick Edwards, otherwise known as Captain Fat Hands. If you want to check out his podcast, it's True Crime Garage. I have to say that he and I have taken very different paths, and we've had some rocky roads. But seeing him succeed, I am so proud of him. He has no idea how proud of him I am and how inspired I am by him. And he's doing something that is not music. But you know what? He still plays every day. He still gigs. He still records when he wants to because he has that money to do that. He has that comfort, that flexibility. And you know what? He found ways to include music into his podcast where he composes and performs all the original music for his podcast. And he does original gigs. And he finds himself more fulfilled by having a regular job and playing only the music he wants or playing when he wants. Is he successful? Absolutely. Is he successful as a musician? Absolutely. Is that the path I want to take? Absolutely not. Does that make it any less valid? Absolutely not. And so Patrick's a guy that's always kind of had a little bit of a fallback plan. He's always had a safety net, and he thrives better in those conditions. Whereas if I have a safety net, it doesn't work for me. I do best with all my attention focused on one area. And we are great friends, and we are very similar in some ways personality-wise, but we also have different risk tolerances. And if you've watched this far, I want to thank you for watching and having a discussion, because that's what this channel is all about. It's about having discussions, sharing experiences of musicians. Rocco is sharing his experience, and I'm probably going to share experiences from other musicians who have vastly different takes. And here on this channel, I'm not presenting anything as gospel, but rather as food for thought. And I'm intentionally trying to cultivate an audience that will sit and watch this stuff and think about it and think, how can they apply that to themselves? I'm doing my best to steer out of that clickbait zone. And sometimes I have to do it with thumbnails and titles to draw people in. But you know what? I'm gradually shifting away from that because I want this channel to be about conversations, about thought, about real useful information. And that's what life is about. It's not really binary. It's not black and white. It's not yes and no. It's not face and heel in wrestling. It's not Democrat, Republican. It's really just, all right, let's take a look at the situation and let's assess it. And instead of reacting, let's think. And I really want to encourage everyone out there to think about these things. And I thank you for watching. And if you'd like to chime in for the discussion, cool, let's have it. Put it in the comments. Do you think that having a plan B is smart, or do you think it's a distraction? Or does it depend on the situation? And I'll leave you with this movie metaphor. One of my favorite movies is Man on Wire. And if you're not familiar, it's a documentary about the true story of a tightrope walker who managed to put up a slack line in between the two trade centers when the World Trade Centers still existed, and he walked across it multiple times, and he was obsessed with it. And he spent years finding a plan where he could do that, and he did it. But here's where the metaphor really lands for me, is that he had no safety net. There was nothing up there to save him if he fell. And he wanted to do that with all of his heart. There was nothing else in the world for him except that walk. And he focused everything he had on it. If he fell, that was it for him. Literally, he was done. And he had this drive to do that, and nothing was going to stop him. And he did it. And failure was not an option for him. And if he fell, he died. And he wanted to do this or he was going to die, literally and figuratively. And that's how I feel about music. I've tried to balance other jobs. I've tried to balance other careers. I took a long hiatus from it, and I was slowly dying on the inside. And right now, I'm a little wobbly on my tightrope walk. I'm not gonna lie. I'm trying to explore new areas as well. I'm going for what I want, and I am scared shitless. And that's usually when I do my best work. For other people, not so much. And that's fine for them, just like this is fine for me. So what's fine for you? I'm curious. Drop me a line. With that being said, be kind to your neighbors, be kind to yourself, and I'll see you for my next video, which is going to be Thursday at noon Central Standard Time. Thanks for watching.